All right, it's 10 minutes past the hour here on Morning Drive. It's Masters Wednesday. You see Mr. Jones center there to the right, the 48 champion, Claude Harmon III, Kerry Middlecoff as well there on the left. The memories through the years. Ben Hogan there on the right, far right, Mr. Clifford Roberts, the co-founder of Augusta National Golf Club. The honor of not only winning the green jacket, but also the moments with Mr. Jones. 1954, one of the most important Masters in history. Sam Snead beating Ben Hogan in a playoff. And finally, 1958, the first of what would be 4 wins for Arnold Palmer at the Masters, 58, 60, 1962, and 1964. And of course, Jack Nicklaus. Jack Nicklaus spoke of how much his father, Charlie, admired Mr. Jones, and Bob Jones saw Jack Nicklaus for the first time when he was 15 years of age in Richmond, Virginia at a junior tournament. And all through the years, the lure of Bob Jones is so significant in American golf. He was the first American superstar in the sport, and joining us now is somebody who knows as much about his life as anybody living today. Sidney Matthew, good morning.
Morning. Great to be here.
You have spent the better part of almost 3 decades studying this man, writing about him as a biographer. I need to start with the why. Why? Because the story of your interest was piqued because you were involved in a lawsuit against the firm he worked for?
It was a class action case, actually, in the 70s and 80s, the Dalcon Shield IUD. And I was always up in the Jones, Bird, and Howell law offices in Atlanta, and I got to meet his law partners and his friends and became interested in Jones as a person, because here he is, he's an amateur, he's a lawyer, and so I became interested in him to study his life history.
You saw memorabilia on the walls of the office, and so that piqued your interest. Did you have a love of the game of golf prior to the curiosity about Mr. Jones?
Well, I grew up in Dunedin, which was the headquarters of the PGA from 28 to 63, and got to meet a lot of the old pros who said, well, you should have seen Sarazen here and Hogan here and Jones played here. Everybody played at Dunedin. They had the seniors teachers trophy presentation there, and so I was steeped in history from Dunedin, but I broke my neck twice playing football and decided I needed a more benign sport, so I changed over to golf.
I mentioned the name O.B. Keeler, who was so important to Bob Jones at a time when the written word was really the way that people learned about their sporting stars. Did O.B. Keeler, did he hold back on talking about Mr. Jones, writing about him, or did he give the full expose of the person?
Well, Keeler, who was an extravagant admirer of the well-crafted phrase, as you call it, really fell in love with this young kid named Bobby Jones. And Keeler monopolized the Jones story until 1926, when he decided that he needed to have a press conference, which was unheard of. And so at the British Open Championship in 1926, they actually had a press conference and allowed all the other sports writers in. And that was really the first time that Keeler turned loose of the story.
It's interesting because Grantland Rice, who was such an important figure when it came to sports writing and telling the stories of the sporting stars, became such an important figure to the development of Augusta National Golf Club. Was there friction between O.B. Keeler and Grantland Rice?
No, they were wonderful comrades. Imagine Rice was in New York, Keeler was in the South, so you had a Yankee and a Southerner, and of course they covered all of the sports. Golf was just one of them. But they shared stories, they were traveling together and really enjoyed each other's company, and of course they were terrific riders.
It's not only great to have you here, you've been kind enough to bring so many of the artifacts, of which you have so many, that you have been gracious enough and generous enough. And within the last month, you have donated a lot of this to Emory University, where Bob Jones got his law. Well, actually, he passed the bar in, what, 3 semesters?
Yeah, after the first
3
year.
semesters.
He took it for practice and passed it to his amazement, and you didn't have to graduate from law school at that time. You could just go practice with your dad, which he did.
Why did you choose to do this? Why did you choose to give all this stuff to Emory University?
Well, conversation with my wife, you need to get rid of this stuff, okay? And I said, I got a plan. She said, I have a plan too. When you die, I'm taking it all to the curb. I said, I get it. Okay, fine. So, after 40 years of research, you need to have that available to other people because it's a wonderful story and everybody needs to write a book on Bobby Jones. That's my view.
Yeah, the Rare Books Library at Emory University is the beneficiary of all of this wonderful stuff. What are some of the things you brought with us? Let's start with the
Jones played hickory shafted clubs. He went through 300 golf clubs to pick the 16 clubs that he won the Grand Slam with. And when they measured them, they were all within a whisker of swing weight and dead weight. He did all that by feel. But one of the clubs that he used only for 2 shots in 1930 for the Grand Slam was this Walter Hagen concave sand wedge, which has like a soup ladle. And he hacked a ball out of a gorse bush in St. Andrews, but later in Hoylake on the 16th, he was on a villainous downhill lie in the bunker and lifted the ball up. A teaspoon too much of sand would have ruined the shot. And the ball just very carefully deposited right on the green and trickled to lip out and save the Grand Slam. So that's...
What would be the assessed value of this particular club?
Well,
do you have any idea?
Well, the market goes up, the market goes down, depending upon the auctions, and you don't see very many of them anymore. I provided the clubs to Robert Redford's people for the Bagger Vance movie, and it was interesting. Of all of the clubs that I gave them, the one that didn't come back was the Walter Hagen sand wedge. So somebody wanted it.
This concave face, one of the more interesting and discussed designs in the history of golf clubs, particularly for somebody as accomplished as Mr. Jones. Now, how about the other club you have in your hand?
Well, I've got, this is a Calamity Jane.
Yes.
Of course, that was Jones's favorite club. November 22, 1925, the clubhouse at Eastlake burned down, and all of his clubs went up in smoke, except for Calamity Jane. Thus, I postulate that the only woman he ever slept with other than his wife Mary was Calamity Jane. He always had that club under his bed. But it was a magnificent club. It was reproduced by J. Victor East in the 20s. And Bob would always take the original shaft out and stick it into the new club head that had a small indentation that they fixed. But he had... some emotions could not be endured with a golf club in his hands, so he violently repositioned the golf club, decorated trees with it. He split the shaft 2 or 3 times, and you may remember we were here when Erie Ball explained Bob brought his club in and I had to put 3 pieces of whipping on it, so
right.
Erie Ball fixed his club.
What are some other things that you have brought with you as well? Because
well, there's a whole bag of goodies here. One of the very interesting things is the ball that Bob Jones played with was the Baby Dimple Spalding golf ball. And it's a 1930s ball, but we can find feather balls, we can find gutta percha balls, we can find Haskells. You can't find the dimple ball. And probably the reason is that they hacked them up and knocked them into the woods and into the trees. But this is very unusual. First box I've ever seen of the Spalding dimple ball. And you can imagine these golf balls are wound with rubber bands. And Howard Rexford, Bob's caddy at Marion in 1930, told me we had to change balls every 3 holes because Bob broke the rubber bands when he smashed his drives into it.
All of the things you're donating to Emory University, you're not donating. Are you donating the golf clubs and the balls? Is everything going? You have 86 boxes of materials going to Emory.
Well, Emory, first of all, has taken the research,
right,
which is 22 linear feet of 4-drawer lateral file cabinets of junk, of letters, original pieces of research. All kinds of documentation of Jones's career and life. It's the stuff that we've used to publish a dozen books or more.
Stay right here, Sidney.
We still have to get rid of this stuff, so you can help me out with that.
We'd be happy to help you with that. We want to talk more about Mr. Jones. We've talked about him, the player, the transition he made from his major championship life to what was the next chapter. The next chapter was Augusta National Golf Club. We have his biographer, Sidney Matthew, with us. We'll discuss that with him on Morning Drive after this.